Hello, and welcome to our webinar, A New Way of Business and Data Analytics, Looker 5. Today's presenters are Ariel Strong, Data Analyst at Looker, and Colin Zima, VP of Product and Chief Analytics Officer. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. There will be a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but you can enter your questions at any time in the box on the lower right-hand corner. And we are recording this webinar, and we will send you the link. At this time, I'll hand it off to Colin.
Thanks. So what we're going to go through here is we're going to give a quick overview of Looker for some of the folks on the line that are a little bit newer. We're going to talk about what's new in Looker 5, our very latest release of the product, and all the new things that we've been working on. We're going to show off some of those new features in a quick demo. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where we're going from there and open things up to questions. So if you guys have questions throughout the process here, feel free to ask. We're going to hold most of them to the end, but if we see some that are relevant as we're talking, we'll try to jump on those as well. So first, a quick overview. Looker is about 6 years old. We've got over 1,000 customers. We've raised quite a bit of money from a lot of names that you've probably heard of. And we're growing quite quickly globally with our headquarters in Santa Cruz and offices in San Francisco, Dublin, London, and New York. And we have major partnerships with a lot of the large database providers like Google and Amazon, Microsoft, a lot of the names that you're familiar with. So we have a pretty impressive customer list. We're working with a lot of fast-growing companies that are really trying to reinvent the way that they're doing data and analytics. And we're excited to show you guys what we're doing. So before we get into that, it's helpful to take a step back and understand how Looker is approaching the problem of doing business analytics. And really, our approach is based on 3 core bets. First, that the databases would get really fast. So where a lot of legacy tools were built on the assumption that running queries in your database was a scary thing to do and to be avoided, we're taking the exact opposite approach, where we are leveraging all of the money that Google and Amazon and Microsoft and IBM and Oracle and all of the new companies that are moving to cloud are putting into developing super fast analytical databases. So rather than try to compete with those databases, we want to take what they're doing and make it easy to scale and use inside your organization. The second bet was that SQL wasn't going away. So Looker has a technical backend that is built to take advantage of what SQL can do. Kind of as we've seen the Hadoop market mature, SQL has actually become the preferred interface for a lot of analytical use cases, and we're continuing to ride that wave. And last, and this is kind of a subtle view, but we believe that the data analyst was underserved in the organization. And that doesn't mean that everyone in the organization doesn't need access to data, but rather by providing analysts really strong tools for doing analytics and building environments for their organization, that is what enables the rest of the organization to be successful. So when you look at the Looker product, we're not trying to skip the data analyst. We're trying to become a superpower for that data analyst. And you're going to see that in a lot of the features that we're building. So when we approach the market, we're very delicately trying to balance these 2 sides of the world. On one side, you've got the legacy kind of monolithic tools like the MicroStrategies and business objects, where governance is readily available. There's lots of data standards. Everyone is collaborating in one place. But the problem there is some of the speed and time to market and ability for people to get at what they need can be limited. And that's where you have kind of the newer workbook-style analytics tools that were entirely self-service, super flexible, beautiful to look at. And they started filling a lot of those gaps in organizations, but pulled away from some of those governance and kind of monolithic properties of having a centralized tool that everyone can collaborate in. So it's those 2 challenges at the same time that we're really trying to focus on as we build the tool. And the way that we go and deliver that out to an organization is by trying to make sure that we deliver the specific need to each tier of customer. So what that means as we develop is that analysts don't necessarily need the same tools as end users in the business. An analyst wants complexity and power and depth, and your end users probably want to focus more on business problems and accessibility, and they want to be actively pulled into the tools. And so that has been a lot of the focus of what we've been driving towards with Looker 5. And that's providing really buttoned up end user experiences at the end of the line so that a marketer can get to exactly what data they need, or a product manager can get at exactly what they need without a lot of the complexity of understanding behind the scenes. And at the same time, making sure that we're supporting those super technical use cases and giving powerful development flows and governance on top of the product. So that's a lot of what we've been focused on as we're building. So what we've been saying is that Looker 4 made it possible. And what that means is that we are a young tool, and we've been doing a lot to build up all of the functionality that folks need to deliver out analytics to an organization. And that means really powerful reporting, and that means a powerful scheduler. So right now, Looker releases every 4 weeks. So that means we're actually delivering out 13 releases a year into the market. And what that means is that we're constantly building new features into the product. We're constantly iterating on what we build, and we're making sure to deliver things. And so kind of the early part of 2017 and even the late part of 2016, a lot of the focus was on really amping up the ability for users to deliver out these analytics to an organization. So you saw major new features like user attributes to pass personalization into the model, or embedded content management and scheduling for folks that are actually delivering out analytics to their customers, a lot of visualization expansion, and integrating Looker deeply into your data pipeline, really making Looker feel natural into your organization. Also, we built up a very large library of Looker blocks, and these are acceleration tools to get you started on doing analytics. And that ranges from data blocks like Event Analytics or Salesforce Analytics or Google Analytics Premium or Zendesk, taking these data sources that you're pulling into your warehouse and getting folks started on those and getting them to kind of high quality reporting quickly. And then also analytics blocks to get deeper. So affinity analysis, user loyalty analysis, repeat purchasing, really making sure that for folks that connect into these data sources and are centralizing all this data, we can get out business solutions to your customers as quickly as possible. So that was a lot of the focus on Looker 4. Looker 5, what we said is Looker 5 is about making it easy. And what that means is we have a lot of the tools now to deliver all of this data out into your organization. And now a lot of it is about the packaging of the tool. So to go back to what I was talking about earlier, the way that you deliver analytics to an analytics team needs to be very different than the way that analytics gets delivered to a business team, where an analytics team might feel more at home in a spreadsheet or in a SQL command line, really kind of getting deep into data. Your CEO wants a beautiful report that can ask the exact 10 questions that he or she cares about, and then can get a little bit deeper if they really have to. And so we have 3 major advancements in the way that Looker is doing that in Looker 5, and then also a lot of core improvements to the BI behind the scenes. So let's take a quick look at those. So the first one is this concept that we're calling data tools. And what data tools are all about is balancing the space between a pre-canned dashboard and an open-ended explore page. So to go back to what I was just talking about with data analysts versus end users, either right now you're delivering your end users a dashboard that maybe they can filter 1 or 2 things to change the state that they're looking at or the user source, but some very limited version of exploring data. Or they're getting completely deep into an open-ended model where they can ask absolutely every question that they want, but they need to get deep into the data model. What data tools allow is a curated middle ground between those 2 problems. So rather than just delivering out a dashboard that can, for example, filter the data set, we can now change the analytics that we're looking at. So the example here, we can toggle between looking at cumulative revenue and cumulative transactions. The user doesn't need to understand the complete depth of the data model, how everything fits together, and really how the sausage gets made. They can just ask a few very curated questions and get to solutions quickly. So the second piece revolves around how that actually gets delivered out. And that's the ability to plug in custom visualizations to any Looker instance. Alongside this custom visualization development, we're also releasing 15 new visualizations in Looker, and we're expanding the library of custom visualizations that you can install into the product. And the concept here is really the analysis that you're doing and delivering to your end users is only as good as the visualization that you can produce to express that analysis. And at Looker, we want to support the native visualizations as deeply as we can. We want to support every corner of building bar charts and line charts and scatter charts. But sometimes you want to explore kind of the edge of the universe around different visualizations. There's thousands of different ways to visualize your data, and giving people an open framework, and this is entirely built in customizable JavaScript, lets us not only deliver that long tail of visualization, but lets anyone build a visualization that others can import into their instance and use on their own. So the idea is really, let's start building the long tail of visualization support and really opening this up so anyone can go build those things. And these are a couple examples of a really nice looking sunburst chart for event traffic, or a Sankey diagram for drilling into, a tree map for looking at a distribution of traffic that you can drill into. So the last piece is probably the most important piece, and it's this idea of taking action. So too often when you're working with an analytics tool, the end of the universe is looking at a report and then leaving the product. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you're doing marketing analytics, you want to be able to understand your data. You want to look at a segment of users, and then you need to go do something about it, because taking action is why you're doing this analysis. With the Action Hub, what Looker is announcing is we're announcing an arbitrary ability to connect any data source into Looker through an external server. And what that means is that suddenly Looker can push data into any tool that you can possibly imagine. So this includes third-party APIs like Slack or Segment or Facebook ads. This includes personal data storage like Box or Google Drive or Dropbox. And it also includes things like bulk delivery options into S3 or Microsoft's Cloud or Google Cloud. And the idea here is, again, Looker can natively support lots of different integrations, and we'll continue to do that. But this allows us to build to the long tail of anywhere that you want to push data to. So no longer when you pull a segment of users that you want to retarget, do you have to copy that list out into a CSV and then push it into another tool. We can actually build direct integrations into those tools in Lookers that your marketers can then go push data to directly. And we're going to continue, again, expanding this library over time so that you can put data anywhere you need to do that sort of analysis. And the reason that we're building all of these things is so that we can deliver out complete end user experiences. So we're also announcing the ability to build powerful applications with all of these components. And we're going to take a look at an example that we've built, and we're going to continue developing these over time. So this is a marketing analytics application that takes AdWords data from Google and actually builds a very custom dashboard and toolkit to go take action on those pieces of data. So I'm looking at ad campaigns over time. I can see the performance of that data. All of this data is drillable and also can be quick filtered, so I can understand how I'm performing in different regions and just ask more questions. So again, that buttoned up user experience for your end users. This also gives you a flavor of actually directly taking action in Looker. So I can actually go and turn off ad campaigns that are underperforming over time. Over here on the right, you can kind of see the performance over time. These top 2 ad campaigns are underperforming. I can actually go turn these off directly from Looker. So the idea, again, is deeply integrating all of this product into the tool so people can take action where they are doing the analysis. And now that ad's paused. So the last piece, and this is honestly probably why a lot of folks have tuned in that are customers as well, is a lot of the things that we're building around empowering the business analytics, the business intelligence that we're working on in Looker. So at our core here is continuing to improve all the functionalities of slicing data, and that means improving the developer experience around collaboration and modeling depth, improving the experience on the Explore page of how to get at data, reshape data, and build reporting, and then how to deliver that out to end users so that they can not only create things that look great, but also save those things and share them out with their coworkers and discover what other people are working on in Looker. So the major core improvements that we're going to show you shortly include data merging, and this includes federating data from different data sources in the front end of Looker, so actually merging data sets on the Explore page across database. Curated content management, the ability to promote and understand what other users in the instance are working on and make it look really nice at the same time. A lot of new statistical functions and calculations, and really some pretty large steps around developer collaboration. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ariel to get into a demo of exactly what we've been working on.
Cool. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I'll wait for that to come up here. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Colin. Well, I'm excited to show everybody on the call today a quick demo of Looker. I'll start pretty high level for those of you who aren't familiar or haven't seen Looker before, and then we'll talk through a couple of those exciting new features coming in Looker 5. So let's dive in here. I'm going to log in with my credentials to Looker. And Looker is a fully web-based application, which makes it really easy for me to find and share data, all from just accessing a web browser. Now, the first feature coming in Looker 5 that I'm really excited to talk about is a brand new landing page. So like Colin mentioned, this is going to help us find and understand that content that is usable or useful for me, as well as might be suggested based on what other folks on my team are using. So at the top, I've got a couple of pieces favorited here. Those are the dashboards and reports that I'm using on a daily basis to do my job. And as I scroll down, I can start to see some other content surfaced based on people within my organization or my team, and I can start to use those as well without having to copy it or replicate it myself. But let's dive in here to this Business Pulse dashboard. So this dashboard is built for an e-commerce store. So we sell clothing online. It's called The Look. And this is a really useful part or dashboard for me to start in as the head of that e-commerce organization. So at the top are a couple of those key metrics that are really important for me to keep my eye on. So we have things like user acquisition and repeat purchase rate. And the really nice thing is that Looker is connecting directly to my database. So as these orders are pumping in, I'm able to see them directly within my dashboard here. Now with Looker, I might notice something about my average order value looks a little bit higher than it did yesterday. So we can actually drill into that, get into those underlying transactions, so I can start to see if there is anything that jumps out at me. And as I scroll through that, I do in fact see that there are a couple of pretty high transactions in here. I think I saw one for maybe $400 or $300 by Mary Weaver. So using Looker, I can now jump off of this and I can actually start to take action. So maybe we want to email Mary a promotion, say, hey, thank you for your loyalty. Here's a 10% off discount on your next purchase. And this is called a data action that we introduced in Looker 4. But with Looker 5, we've made this easier than ever to integrate with some of your favorite tools, things like SendGrid and Segment, so we can take action directly from the data that we're seeing. All right, so let's keep going down. So as a part of my regular job, I like to look at our order volume and see how many orders are coming in month over month. And from the dashboard here, I can get a lot of really great information off the bat. So I could start to click some of these off and just focus in on one of our top selling categories. Or I could even change some filters, maybe just focus this on a particular region or market segment. But something that my manager's been asking for a lot lately is to actually get these results in quarter over quarter. And that's going to bring us to the next exciting feature that I want to show you guys, which we're calling data tools. So let's actually dive into this chart a little bit more. And data tools are a new curated experience somewhere in between a more fixed dashboard that's really quick and easy to use and a fully open-ended Explorer where I can literally ask any question of the data. So from the data tool, I now have the flexibility to really explore this data set deeper than I was on the dashboard. I could switch this now to look at my sales quarter over quarter. And then because this is a really nice web interface, I can take that URL, send that over to Colin, say, hey, here are those quarterly sales. But let's say that our marketing team just ran a new campaign last week, and I actually want to see on a more granular level if that campaign has influenced our sales in the past few days. So perhaps we'll switch this back to the daily view and just focus it in on this month. And we can see immediately that there was a jump here in sales last week. But what we are looking at is the total order profit. But with the flexibility of the data tool, I can very quickly change that analytics, and I'm looking at the different metrics and maybe just hone in on first-time shopper revenue. Because that campaign was actually focused on bringing in new customers and acquiring new customers to our site. Now, from the data tool, this is a really good way to curate the experience for business users. So to really put out those applications that are going to give the flexibility for people to dig into that data deeper. But with Looker, we do have the flexibility to go and ask any question, so we can even go to the next step here. And with that, we'll go into our Explore environment. From the Explorer, what we'll see on the left-hand side are a bunch of different metrics and fields that I can choose from. So if I wanted to now switch this instead of category, I could look at this broken out by a user segment, or I could dig into this by gross margin. We really have the flexibility to ask any question of any data that we're collecting. But something that I really want to see is not just my order volume, but also how my order volume compares to the number of visitors we're getting to our website. So let's actually build a brand new chart. I'm going to remove all of our fields and filters here. And let's start out. So the very first thing I want to know is my order volume over time. So I'm going to bring in just a count of orders. And as I run that, what we're going to see is that Looker is generating that SQL. It's writing all of the SQL and doing the heavy work for us in the back end. And then if I wanted to change this and say, let's just look at the last 30 days of orders, we can see that SQL being dynamically updated. All right, then we'll get our result set and build our chart on top of it. Now, the next thing that I really want to know, again, is I want to correlate this with the number of visitors we're getting to our website, so our web events data. And what I can see right here is this data set that I'm working in is just from our e-commerce data, all of the orders that are flying in. And our web data is actually stored in a completely different database. But with Looker 5, that is no longer a problem because we've introduced something called merged results, where I can actually start to bring in data from different data sets, different databases, and merge them together on the front end. So let's dive in. All right, I'm going to go into our merged results, and now I'm going to be presented with the option to choose data from any of those data sets or databases that I have. So let's go into our web events. And let's pull an account of our session, so how many visitors are coming to our site in the last few days. So again, I'm going to add a filter here for the last 30. We'll rerun that. Now we can visualize this again. And these reports separately are really powerful. They tell us a good story about how our traffic and how our orders are changing. But more useful, again, is I want to be able to combine those and see them together side by side. So let's go ahead and save this. Right. If we run it again, with our new merged results feature in Looker 5, I can now see on every day how many orders have been placed alongside how many visitors or sessions we had on our website. And then if I pop open my visualization bar, again, we can start to look at these side by side, perhaps even change around some of the axes, and maybe change one of these series into a line chart. And that's already really interesting information. So I can see based on when I launched that campaign, we had a higher number of orders, but our web traffic was more or less the same. But what if we could now create a brand new metric or some sort of ratio to see how this is trending over time? Well, we can do just that. So if I go into our calculations bar, we could start to do something like maybe orders divided by sessions. We've also introduced, I won't go into it, but we have also introduced a bunch of brand new statistical functions within this table calcs part of the application that Colin can talk a little bit more to after the demo. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a format. All right, cool. So now we can see in combination our orders and events coming from completely different databases, We can see when that's spiking up and how it's trending in relation to each other. And again, I could take this URL, I'll send that over to Colin and say, hey, keep up the good work on those campaigns. Let's keep it running because we're getting more orders. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Colin to talk about a couple more exciting features in Looker 5.
Perfect. So you got a good flavor for how we're working with data merging and some of the new things that we've built into Looker. I think things worth highlighting is that we're really trying to continue to keep developing our content management system. So you've got a flavor for the new home pages that we're building in terms of curating favorites for end users and suggested content. We're going to continue building a lot of functionality around faceting that data by team, and being able to drill in and look at what different users and different teams are looking at on an active basis, so what's most popular with those groups, and also what they've built recently and what they're looking at recently. You saw a lot around data merging across database, so the ability to federate inside Looker between different reporting use cases. And one thing that we didn't get into was the developer experience, and the ability for developers to now take advantage of that Git-based model that's sitting behind the scenes for Looker that encodes all of that business logic, and actually being able to collaborate in Git just like your developers are for your applications in general. So we're going to get much deeper into these different topics. We actually do a bi-monthly release presentation that gets really deep into these features for folks that are looking to learn a little bit more about the guts of how all of these things work. That's going to be on October 5th at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. So feel free to contact us if you want to hear about more. And before we get into questions, I just wanted to kind of quickly scroll through everything that we're announcing as part of that. And if there are specific questions about some of those features, we can address some of those. But we're releasing landing page with illustrative thumbnails. We are in the process of testing our feeds for content in terms of what folks are exploring and what folks are actually working with in real time. We announced Git branching in the model, so taking that model-based development and actually letting developers both collaborate on branches, so work together to build that data model, and also for developers to have multiple branches. So for one developer to be able to build that data model on their own and then switch to do another small change in a different branch. Again, just like your development workflows. We mentioned those new statistical function calculations, but we've expanded our table calculation library by 50 new functions. This is a quick overview of all the different functions that we've pushed in. Match lookups, a lot like for the folks that are really familiar with Excel VLOOKUPs and things like that. Large, small for looking at distributions of things. Skew, kurtosis, and a lot of statistical functions around shapes of curves, and a lot of statistical testing around z-test, t-test, binomial tests. So you can do all of your A/B testing natively in Looker. As part of the data tools, we got a quick demo of that. But a lot of what we're working on is really improving that user input so that you can control the filter experience for those data inputs. So really having more fine-grained control over exactly how those filters work for your end users, whether they're enumerated sets, whether they're fully exposed, and how you interact with those filters. For the more technical developers on the line, we're also announcing the release of visualization of SQL queries. So while most developers are really building this data model so that they can explore data the way that Ariel showed in the demo, a lot of folks just want to be able to write SQL and really get at data quickly that's not modeled. So we've announced the ability to explore your schema in SQL and also visualize that data. And then finally, this idea of merging results together. So taking all of the things that you're building and actually combining together ad hoc in the front end. So working around some of those limitations of the database around what a database can do in SQL and being able to do those things on the fly. So with that, we're going to get into some questions, and I'm just going to leave up a few resources that you guys can take a look at if you want to learn a little bit more about how Looker works. And what we've been doing with Looker 5. So the first question that I saw kind of fly through was when I was talking about the Action Hub, and there was a quick question about Looker ingesting data from spreadsheets. So that's not available natively in Looker right now. We do work with a variety of partners that can actually natively put data into your database. So, for example, with Amazon, you can push spreadsheets into Athena and actually directly query them. The same deal with Google and BigQuery, and pulling data directly out of BigQuery that was loaded in via Google Sheets. So there are some options there, but that is something that we're going to continue to work on. The next question that I'm seeing here is what data hubs are being supported in the next release. So let me scroll back quickly and take a look at what is available there. Out of the box, we actually have blocks with code for Google Drive, Segment, Slack, S3. I'll have to go through and pull that after, but we're going to continually be really expanding this data set, and we're aiming for about 100 integrations in the next 6 months. So we're really aggressively going to continue expanding this library. And if there's one that you don't see here, the framework is such that we can go build those things ad hoc. So I think it's important to not get scared away by what's here and what's not right now. What's important is that there's a framework to do this in a generalized way. And also, we're building features like OAuth into user-authenticated pushing into these data sources as well. So while right now it's going to push as one generic user, we're working on the functionality to also be able to connect to these data sources with an authenticated user and push data into those sources as well. There's a question on what the general timeline on being upgraded to version 5 is. That release is going to be rolling out over the next 4 or 5 weeks. If you're a customer there, just contact your either contact us on a support or email your CSM, and we should be able to help you with an exact timeline there. You talked about the data being refreshed automatically without hitting refresh. Is this feature new in Looker 5 or existing in Looker 4?
Yeah, I can take that one. It's actually an existing feature in the dashboard. You can have it auto refresh on a schedule of your choosing. So it could refresh and re-hit the database every minute or every 30 seconds or every 5 minutes. And then that also does take into account whatever caching you've set up. So you can control that caching to say, hey, I want my data to hit the database or the query to hit the database in real time versus I want to cache that result set for a longer period.
Yep. So I might need some clarity on this one. It says, will you guys support redo or undo features? There's kind of a couple answers. So first, if you're on the Explore page, everything is going to get encoded in the URL. So almost literally everything that you're doing in Looker in terms of building queries is undo and redoable just through your browser history. In terms of the content system itself, that gets into kind of a more broad question about how we're versioning content over time. And this gets a little bit into kind of the roadmap of where we're going with the product. But we are currently building a system such that you can version any of your content anytime that you want and actually sync that directly into the model. So you can take your entire content system, selectively push things into the model and version it there, and then be able to pull things in and out of there as needed. So we're building a much more flexible versioning system into the product in general. Could we talk a bit around new features for geocoding and map visualizations? So a couple big features here, a couple that are generally on the horizon. So I think the first and probably most impactful thing is something that we're working on right now around an ability to actually pull more data into the browser on a given query. So we do have a 5,000 row limit on the Explore page, and that's going to be, we're aiming to expand that up to 50,000 to at least hit every zip code for visualization in the next several releases. So that's going to be a pretty major step forward. Another kind of slightly non-product feature that we also announced as part of Looker 5, and you guys can email us for details here, is a concept of what we're calling data blocks. And what data blocks are is actually we have some pre-canned sources of data that you can merge with your own data around zip code mapping, weather, some government statistics, And you can actually pair those alongside all of the location data that you're using to normalize a lot of the content that you're working with. So that's a pretty large change that we're working on there as well. There's a question, joined late. Is there an easy way to automatically send recurring reports via email?
There is, and this is an existing feature that's been in Looker for a couple of releases, but you can schedule dashboards or single looks, which are just reports, automatically through our scheduler modal. That can be on a regular basis to email, like on a daily or weekly. It could also go out through a webhook or to Slack or to some other integration like Segment or Twilio. There's also the ability through that same interface to set up alerts. So let me know when this happens. Let me know when this threshold was met. So absolutely.
Looking through here. There was a question on data merging about what content can get merged. Do you want to get into how those merges work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the data merge happens on the front end. So if we have two different explorers, all we need is some sort of common key, be it a date or be it a common, say, state or zip code. And then on the front end, you can choose on what field should those two different data sets be joined together. And that way you're going to be able to see those side by side.
Yep. And that would be included across things like table calcs and really anything that you can put on the export page. So I think probably the last question that we'll take here, and again, feel free to contact us on the contact information that we have listed. Let me get back to that slide for everyone. And we're happy to answer really any questions that you have specifically. Any thoughts about a data marketplace similar to the data blocks just mentioned? So I think that's definitely where we're going, but we're not quite there yet. So Google has announced a data marketplace. Snowflake has announced a data marketplace. We probably don't want to be a third place to find data, but we do want to find data sources that are free and find ways to get them into people's databases. So I think we do want to enable things like that. Actually, we've got some follow-up questions that I'm going to hit. Can you share more about the index match use case in Looker? So the pretty simple answer there is it works exactly like index match in Excel on the page itself. So you can essentially look at match lookups and then index them and kind of do that sort of calculation on the page. It's in the current release that's out there behind a license feature. So if you wanted to play around with that, happy to get it in front of you and you can kind of take a look. And there was a quick question on the pricing model. So the simple answer there is we have a platform fee and then we charge on a per user basis. That's just something that we would work through with you. And then the true last question that we will take, are array formulas possible? So the answer is yes, we have lots of different array formulas. We don't really have a generalized array formula framework. But again, probably something that you're going to want to get into in the product itself. Trying to enumerate all the different things that we can do with arrays and lookers is probably not, at first I don't know them, and second, probably a little bit easier to do on your own. So I think with that, we're going to sign off and really appreciate everyone's time. Kind of as these follow-up questions come in, we'll try to ping people and make sure we answer them if there are stragglers. For folks that are looking for a little bit more information, ping us at that email address listed, and we're happy to do an ad hoc demo for you and really get into it deep. We do have a free trial, and we're happy to spin up an instance for anyone here to see these things in real life. So again, thank you, and with that, we'll sign off.